Working out what to wear in a triathlon race can be tricky. There's so much more to consider than just your tri-suit. Well, I'm going to be opening up that age-old debate of socks versus no socks. So in this video, we're going to be looking at the pros and the cons and comparing different race styles to help you decide which side of the line you sit. Now, if like me, you come from a running or a cycling background, the thought of doing that sport without socks might seem incomprehensible, not just because of the comfort level, but also the unwritten rules of that sport. But don't worry, you're doing triathlon now, so you can throw those rules away. Okay, let's start with socks and the pros for wearing them. Well, the obvious is they feel good. Putting on a brand new pair of colourful socks has got to be a good thing. And they also act as a barrier between your foot and your shoe. And if you do go for a sport-specific sock, they can even add that bit of support to your foot. Wearing the correct pair of socks can reduce the risk of blisters and also prevent any hot spots, especially when it comes to running. And talking of hot, if you do have the right pair of socks, they can actually help your feet keep cool, and vice versa. You can get socks that are specialised for keeping your feet warm if you're competing in really cold conditions so that they don't turn into ice blocks on the end of your legs. But going back to the heat, if you get that burning feeling on the soles of your feet when you're doing a long run on asphalt, certain socks can also reduce that. Okay, I'm probably starting to show where my allegiances lie, but it's time to look at the cons for wearing socks. Obviously, in triathlon, time is of an essence, and when it comes to transitions, you don't want to be losing those valuable seconds of having to dry your feet, trying to squeeze your toes into well-fitting socks, and it also takes a lot of effort. You might even find, if you're out of breath, that you need to take a rest and sit down to do this. And finally, if you're racing somewhere that's hot and it's a long race, you've got to think about those tan lines, because it might seem like a badge of honour at the time around your triathlon friends, but when you come to a party and you want to wear a nice dress, those tan lines mid-calf are not going to look good. Okay, admittedly I was talking to our female viewers then, but right, now it's time to look at no socks and the pros of going without. Well, the obvious one comes to speedy transitions. Now, this is especially important if you're racing in a draft legal triathlon and you're trying to make the bike pack out of the swim. Now, there's no point in having comfortable feet with your socks on if you can just see the lead pack disappearing into the distance. Well, it also looks like you mean business. It's a sign of a tough triathlete going without socks. And then finally, as I've already mentioned, if you're racing somewhere hot, you're avoiding those awful tan lines. Okay, you didn't think I was going to forget about the cons, did you? Right, here we go. Top of the list, or top of my list anyway, is comfort. Even if I have to wear my trainers without shoes back from training because I forgot to take a clean pair, they start to feel a little bit uncomfortable, and that horrible feeling of sticky clamminess inside your shoes just isn't nice. And talking of discomfort, unless you have a pair of shoes that fit absolutely perfectly, then you're going to start to get blisters and rubs pretty quickly. Also, if you're racing in poor weather conditions, your feet will get cold much faster. And finally, a point that maybe not all of you will agree with me on, you don't get the chance to brighten up your kit with a pair of nice looking socks. So we've looked at the pros and the cons. It's now time for you to make that decision. But there are a couple of other factors you might want to consider, such as the race type. For example, if you're doing a draft legal race, then you're not going to want to risk wasting any time in transition. And then you've got the distance of your race to consider. The longer the race, the smaller the ratio of transition will be, and the more important comfort becomes. But if you look at the pros, you're not going to see anyone racing Olympic distance or less bothering with socks in their transition. But then if you look at the 70.3 or middle distance races, you'll see a mixture amongst the pros, some choosing to wear socks and some not. And then for the full distance, the majority will wear socks, at least for the run, and some of them even for the bike. We've already covered the race conditions, and don't forget that socks can play an important part in keeping your feet warm or cool, whichever it is you require, and it's especially important when it comes to the longer distance racing. And another area that's worth mentioning is socks for aero or compression gains. Now, recently we saw pro triathlete Lucy Charles using aero socks on the bike leg in Ironman South Africa. Now, if you think that the gains of wearing aero socks will be bigger than the time it will take you to get a tight-fitting sock on in transition, then it's something definitely worth considering. And a lot of triathletes do use compression socks. If you're one of those people, just remember you can't wear a full sock for the swim. If you're going to use calf guards and it's a wetsuit swim, then you can put them on underneath and you won't waste time in transition. But if it's a non-wetsuit swim, or you do want to wear a full compression sock, then you'll need to consider the time it's going to take for you to put it on compared to the benefits you'll have from wearing them. Finally, you need to decide whether you're going to use your socks for the bike and the run or just the run. And this will also dictate what type of sock you choose. It's time for tips. We'll start with socks. Now, it might sound silly, but you need to practice putting on your socks fast. And there is a certain knack to it. Some people will roll their socks down in preparation, others will fold them. It's a personal preference. And then if you've got socks that are specific to left and right foot, make sure that you put them in or on the correct shoe to save time in transition. And finally, there's nothing wrong with wearing new socks on race day, but don't experiment with a new style or design unless you've practiced first. If you're racing with no socks, you're going to have to do some training without them as well. Now, this is to get your feet used to the feeling, and they will start to get a little bit harder. And if you have different shoes for racing, make sure you do at least a couple of sessions in those, and you'll start to identify any hot spots or areas where they might rub. And then before your race, you can put a little bit of Vaseline on those spots, and that should help reduce the chance of getting blisters. And then in T1, you can have a towel ready to help dry your feet very quickly. Pop some talcum powder inside your shoes. That'll help your feet slide in, and also a little bit of lubricant such as Vaseline on the heel just to help with the ease of getting them on. Now, you can also get some more race-specific shoes for triathlon, which might be worth considering if you're sure that you want to do longer distance races without socks, as these could be a little bit more comfortable and sometimes even have an extra inner layer. Well, that should have helped you decide which side of the fence you sit on. Are you socks or no socks? Do let us know which you choose and why. And you've probably guessed by now that I'm a strong advocate for wearing socks. And that is partly because I came into triathlon starting off with the longer distance races. But I do have my first ever sprint triathlon coming up, so it's probably time I dipped my toes into going sockless. Well, if you've enjoyed this and you want to catch more videos from GTN, just hit the globe to subscribe. And if you want some similar race day hacks, we've made a video on that just here. And I also made a video recently on how to run in sand, and that's just here.